Quiet on the set.
Yeah, shush. Sorry, Gelman.
Welcome to Emotionships, where we talk about the real reason everything happens for a reason. I'm your host, Charlie Carroll, along with my caffeinated co-host, Valerie Redmond.
I mean, that's not wrong.
Welcome to the program.
Hi.
Episode 43. How are you today?
So good.
I'm a little envious of your sweatshirt.
Why? You probably have the same one.
Well, no, I tried to order it weeks ago and they were out of my size. I'm glad you got that.
They have my size.
Yes, I forget what they call it. It's something about like the original or a hipster word for original.
Yeah. What?
Vintage, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know, but
yeah. Their stuff is super comfy.
Yes.
I'm a fan.
Oh yeah, for sure. Big week.
We're not telling anyone the company we're talking about.
Oh,
we're talking about.
Sorry. We assume you're watching the video via YouTube. We are talking about Aviator Nation. We just gave a hat away.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Well, no.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago.
Yeah. Well, you know what I mean. That's still just.
Yeah.
That's in my definition of just.
Sure.
I was looking at the news this morning, and you know what I think? I hate to say this to all of our listeners because some of them have been wanting us to address this, and some of them have high hopes that the election is not over. But I think the election's over.
I think the election's over.
There are a lot of people that don't think that.
They will never. I think there are some people that will never think that.
Yeah. It's an interesting thought just to live in that space where you feel like your candidate was cheated and therefore you're not going to accept the results.
Yeah.
I know it happens almost every election. You know, just we're going all the way back to the hanging chads in 2000. But I think this is...
Was that the Florida thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you say?
Hanging chads.
What is that? I don't know what you're talking about.
On when we used to do ballots where it would punch a hole, like when you're in school.
Yeah.
On those tests.
Yeah.
That's what that was. That they were arguing some of them had not been punched through or it was the wrong vote. But yes, I've had a couple of people reach out to me just to say, will you guys talk more about this and whether or not you think it's going to be a thing, whether or not President or President-elect Biden will take office. And I do. I think he will take office.
I do too. Sorry about that.
Though I think it will continue on for a while in the courts. But I think as of January, we will have a new president.
I agree.
People tend to struggle with this.
Well, we've talked a lot about it. I mean, it's a lot harder when that's where all of your faith is placed.
Right. Yeah.
That makes it really difficult when the person that you want to hold office does not. Whether it's whether they are getting booted rightfully or not.
Right.
That was a harsh way to say it. Whether they're being removed from office rightfully or not.
Well, there's a definite emotion there when it comes to wanting or leaning into what you think you can get someone else to do for you versus just accepting what you can do for yourself and what you can do for others. And so if you listen to this podcast or if you go back and listen to a lot of these episodes, you'll see where we emphasize personal responsibility, which includes your vote.
Yeah.
But we all have the power to make great change in our own life and in the life of others.
I mean, there are things that are out of our hands.
Sure.
I mean, like we can take
a lot more than we think.
We can take personal responsibility, and yet the person who holds office or the people who are holding political office get to make decisions that we can't really do anything about. And so that, I mean, I don't think it's so easy to be like, well, just take personal responsibility. I know that's not what you're saying,
sure.
But there is an impact that those holding political office have on our lives, for better or for worse.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I understand that people have a difficult time. I mean, I have an opinion, and I get that people have a difficult time with whoever's in office. What?
Nothing. I was laughing at the thought that last night at corporate prayer, I overheard two of my friends talking about they were not Trump supporters. They were Biden voters.
Okay.
And they were just talking about some of their neighbors who are being defiant and have their signs, Trump signs out. And, there's all kinds of stuff out there. The truckers uniting to say that they're going to go on a nationwide strike if Trump isn't in office and all of this stuff. But I was laughing at last night. I had a thought with my two friends that are Biden supporters, how funny it would be to find some old election signs and put them in their front yard
Oh my goodness.
and see how long it takes for them to find them.
Probably not very long.
I wouldn't think so, but they were really laughing about their neighbors who were being defiant with these signs, and I just thought it would be kind of cool to sneak out there and put signs in their own yard. Not to them, it wouldn't be cool.
No, but they would probably take joy in throwing them away.
Yeah. This past weekend, the Masters tournament. Yeah, this past weekend.
Yeah, you're right.
Amazing.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever been?
To the Masters?
Yeah.
No.
It's amazing.
I feel like that's not a thing that the majority of people have been to.
If you're a golf fan, I mean, it's like the mecca.
Wasn't it hard to get a ticket?
You have to put yourself on in a raffle, and they give those out every year that way. And so I think, I mean, they work very hard to keep their prices affordable in like 1950s prices.
Okay.
And so when you go there, if you get awarded a ticket, they're maybe $80 ish.
Oh.
But if you want to buy one because you did not win one, you're probably going to pay $1,000 plus a ticket.
Oh yeah. Okay.
To go there. And the reason why people pay so much money to go there is, I mean, the history is amazing,
Mm-hmm.
and the culture that they have developed there for excellence is absolutely mind blowing. It's the only place that I've ever been where I felt like all of the grass that I was walking on was like carpet.
Yeah.
And so they put, I believe it's 40,000 people a day in there for the practice rounds, which is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then when the tournament starts, I think that goes up to maybe 80,000 people on the grounds each day. And the food, they keep everything, I think, at $1 just to make it fun and affordable. And they have so much Southern hospitality and food culture wrapped up into their food and beverage program.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. They sell these egg salad sandwiches in just a little green bag.
Yeah.
That are to die for.
I love egg salad. I feel like it's something like the Kentucky Derby where you
Very
probably
much so.
get a better, like you get to see more if you watch it on TV, but you don't get, like, there's so much of the experience that you can't even understand it unless you're there.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. I'm a golfer and I'm a golf fan, and I had always heard about Augusta. I've been twice, and both times it exceeded my expectation.
Did you win a ticket or purchase a ticket?
I purchased a ticket. I have never been selected. I've probably done that lottery for 10 years.
It's rigged.
Yeah, just like
all the elections.
Just like the election. They're trying to keep me out.
How many people win?
It's 40,000 people a day for the 4 practice rounds or 3 practice rounds, and then probably 80,000 people-ish. And it might be 40,000 people a day, but I think it swells when the tournament actually starts on Thursday through Sunday.
But that's how many people get in the lottery?
Yeah.
Oh. So if you win the lottery, you only get one day there?
Well, there are different things that you apply for when you put your name in the lottery.
That's a lot of people.
It's
and
amazing.
And you've never won?
Nope. The 2 times that I've gone, one time I was gifted the tickets through like just a business contact, and the other time I purchased them.
Wow.
But it is, they run that tournament so well. When you go in, they give you just like a pamphlet that tells the history of each hole, and then all of the plants. There's like 100,000 different variations of plants and shrubs out there, and it's just like, it's like heaven. I mean, these tall pine trees, and again, it's got so much history. It's quite it's my favorite sporting event of the year. And so this year obviously was very different with COVID. Usually they do the tournament the first week of April. And so now with it this past week, it's the first time ever in all of their history that it was ever hosted in the fall versus in the spring.
It's wild.
Yeah. So
have you ever played there?
that is on my bucket list.
Okay.
You're pulling something out of me. I finally found a contact. I mean, 99.9% of people never play there.
Oh.
They just 2 years ago or 3 years ago started letting women play there at Augusta National.
Yeah.
Which is good. It's a great change that they made. And 2 years ago, they had the first women's tournament there, which is, again, something that they're trying to build and grow into the game of golf. But it's almost impossible to get on. And there's a lot of cool stories, like Michael Jordan, someone that you and I are both fans of, tried to become a member there, and they're like, sorry. It's something you can put your name on a list, and we'll do our best to get with you. But they literally run that place in a way that's like, just because you're a celebrity doesn't mean we're going to put you in here.
I like that. The woman thing is like that took a little too long in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure.
That's crazy.
But thankfully they're coming around, and their first member was Condoleezza Rice.
Don't they know how much women
member.
love egg salad sandwiches?
Right. Hello.
Gosh.
Could have upped those sales.
Jeez. Come on, guys.
But yes, it's pretty wild. It's pretty fantastic.
Well, hopefully you get to complete that bucket list.
I finally found someone who has a contact, a friend who is a member. And now my friend, has played 3 times. And I'm like, bro, this is like major bucket list stuff for me.
Yeah,
like,
you need to spoil him.
Yeah, I do. I need to get a little more intentional about it. There's cool stories, and then we'll move on from the Masters. Like Justin Timberlake, who is a really good golfer, played there the first time with himself, his father, and Butch Harmon, who Butch Harmon like trained Tiger and is probably the most well-known instructor in the game. And they're playing the first time, and I forget who their fourth was. And they're in Amen Corner, which is just like this little section of Augusta National that it's a par 3 over water. You would recognize it. And he hits it. He plays the hole and gets a hole in one.
Justin Timberlake?
Yeah. And it's just like, if you were ever going to get a hole in one, to do it at Augusta National is just like,
well, yeah. I
insane.
mean, there's nothing better. I wonder what he sucks at.
That's a good question.
That's kind of annoying that he did that.
Justin, if you're listening
Justin, can you please let us know? Send us a bullet point list of things you suck at.
What do you suck at? Our caffeinated co-host would love to know what you just suck at. It's not dancing.
No, I mean, honestly, he's funny. He's a good singer. It's annoying. I feel annoyed.
Your voice elevated there.
Okay, moving on from the Masters and Justin Timberlake.
Yes. Interesting. I just saw where Chipotle, which we're a fan of here at Emotionships, the podcast, did something for the first time ever, and they have gone to their first digital-only restaurant. This is a thing.
It's a thing.
I'm really wondering about this, and being a restaurateur myself, considering making a pivot, a change or two, ghost kitchens, and creating these online entities that are focused on bringing food to you without the quality of the experience dropping is a huge thing right now.
Yeah.
If you follow some of the food blogs out there like Eater, you know that a lot of restaurants are pivoting to this. In light of it is November, not long ago it was not feeling like November in Ohio, but now with colder temperatures upon us, we have all of these cases rising in the hospitals and people talking about it. And I think that it could be, there is a real chance that we could go back to quarantining.
Yeah, I agree.
I hate to say it, and I have mixed emotions about it, but seeing...
Do you?
Do I have mixed emotions about it?
I know you have emotions about it. I'm surprised to hear they're mixed.
I mean, the point that I do see and understand, having friends that work in the industry, is even if the mortality rate is still low, which it is, it's under 1%, I can see their point about if all of a sudden cases start to spike and there's a segment of our population that cannot get in because everybody else is in line in front of them. I can see where that would, where the mortality rate would go up, and some people could be put in a compromised position.
Sure.
And so I get that, and I want to be sensitive to that. The other side of that is, when Governor DeWine here in Ohio came out and said he was considering shutting bars and restaurants down again, and he knew that that would put restaurant owners and employees in a hard time. I mean, those are things that we still have yet to measure. As you know, there are so many inconsistencies because this is the first time that we've gone through it. We won't know for years as to what was the right and wrong decision. And so even just recognizing that, I want to be sensitive, not to act like we have it all figured out or we know exactly how it is. But, the idea with Chipotle there is they have seen, like everyone else, such an increase in delivery that you've got to wonder, as you think about the next 20 years, how many restaurants are going to pivot to try to provide an experience in people's homes.
Yeah. I mean, I think especially this season when it's cold and it's dark really early, like I want good food delivered to my house. I don't want to have to take my kids out somewhere. Yeah. I don't like being out in the cold. I think it makes sense. Yeah. Especially with the backdrop of COVID.
Well, and one of the things that, if you get into energy work and you start following this podcast a little closer, what you'll start to hear is the idea of emotional resilience, right? And that's true on a personal level for someone, that you have to let your hardships and the trauma that you experienced as a child make you more resilient emotionally. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you what, as a business owner, that's very true with businesses. I honestly, Governor DeWine recently said that now they are going to enforce the gatherings of 10 people or less publicly, but also privately. And I thought that was a huge statement. And he was reading off of a teleprompter, which tells me it wasn't an accident, that it didn't just accidentally get into his speech as he was going.
Illinois has done that.
Yeah. I think that's kind of crazy.
Right before the holidays too.
Yeah. That you can, as an elected official, you're going to say that you're going to enforce what people are doing in the privacy of their own homes. Now, whether medically the evidence and the science supports that or not, we're getting dangerously close to infringing upon people's constitutional rights when you say that you're going to come into their home and tell them what they can and cannot do. And the reason I say this is it's not hard to wrap your mind around why that would make sense medically, but here's the thing. Where does that stop? Mm-hmm. If we get that pattern started, that you can come into my home when I sustain you, the government was made to serve the people, which obviously history shows us that government typically outgrows itself and jumps the fence. The monster jumps the fence and then you got to try to get it back in. But where does it stop if we allow a situation like this to create a precedence where government can come into your home and say, sorry, you've got 12 people, 2 of you need to leave? Where does that stop?
Is that what he said? What did he say? I didn't hear that
well,
part. In terms of enforcement. Well,
he just said that they were working on a plan that they would come out with in the next few weeks, where they are going to use the Bureau of Workers' Compensation to enforce social distancing in gatherings of 10 people or less publicly, but that they were working on a plan to enforce it privately. Gotcha. And it's just I don't know about that. I mean, that's getting into crazy talk. Mm-hmm. And again, I understand it all, and I think there appears to be evidence that masks are beneficial, and
it's helpful if you don't want to spend the holidays with your extended family.
That is very true.
I mean, there's a bright spot.
Very true. Sorry, we're social distancing. I know
By
you want
law.
to. Sorry, can't do it. But it's this idea of emotional resilience, and it's what comes at you in life. You're going to either use it as a tool to get you going and to make you stronger and better, or you're going to be crushed underneath of it. And here's the variable that's not changing. It's coming. Those hard times and emotionally challenging times are headed your way, whether you like it or not. And the question becomes, do you pay now or do you pay later? I can push off the liability and not deal with it and ignore it, or, blow it off, the opportunity to grow and change. And I will suffer for it later, because then when something more difficult or more demanding emotionally comes to me, I didn't use the first opportunity to grow emotional resilience or strength. And so now it's even tougher, and I'm less equipped to respond to the situation.
Okay, so drive it home in terms of the 10 people or less. What are you saying?
Well, I'm not connecting it to that as much as, the 10 people or less and what's happening now in the world, whether it's the post-election stuff or whether it's the count on the virus going up and government officials potentially overstepping their bounds. What I was doing with the emotional resilience is, you're going to face a lot of uncertainty and difficult times in life. And you, whether it's you as a person or you as a leader of an organization, better embrace difficulty and allow it to create emotional resilience, or you're going to be in trouble. Mm-hmm. And so it's viewing each and every difficult situation or every disappointment that I encounter as an opportunity to respond to in a healthy way and grow stronger, or just voice my disappointment in the fact that I've never felt so out of control. You can't control the energy that's around you on a regular basis, but you can control your response to it, which makes you more equipped to handle that energy in the future. Energy is running the world today. And so the more you can interact with varying kinds and varying levels of that energy, the better off you're going to be. Most people don't realize this, but the real currency in life is energy. Dollars are just paper. I can remember recently when I was leaving to go out of town, and the IRS sent me a letter that Amy opened literally right before we got in the car to head to the airport.
Never open a letter from the IRS right before vacation.
When you're supposed to be getting like emotional rest.
Yeah, just wait.
And the IRS said, hey, back to this return that you've amended twice because it got messed up and I did not have the right bookkeeper. And so I originally got a bill for $137,000. And we've been working on this with the IRS, talking to them, but the IRS is so big that one department often doesn't know
Sure.
what the other department is doing. And so we're getting ready we are out the door, and we get this letter that says you now owe $246,000 just for your 2016 return. If you don't do this, blah, 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 blah. And it just comes back to like, that's an opportunity not to be overwhelmed by the idea of money on paper. Honestly, that's what it is. Mm-hmm. That you'll see, and I've told people this before as I've tried to help them through it. Someone like the IRS, which is a credible institution that can really take whatever they want, sends you a letter and says, you owe $250,000 and you need to be about it now. That's energy in motion is what that is. That's a number on a piece of paper. And if you don't know better and you're not aware, you will cave to that. And it had the potential to ruin our couple of days of getting away and trying to get mental rest or emotional rest. And it just comes back to, there's a level of emotional resilience there for me because I've been here before and I've done these things and I understand it. It's like, okay, that's just energy in motion. Those are just numbers that represent something. And so what got us into this little, me saying this, is the idea that the real currency in life is energy. And you better start learning how to handle it and how to manage energy, because it determines what opportunities come next. It determines the efficiency and the results and the rewards of what you're currently dealing with, and it also has to do with what comes next. And so if I take on the skill as, a soccer player or a golfer, and I learn, one trait, that trait does something to my mind and to my vision that opens me up to see and take on other skills or other traits. Emotionally in life, emotional resilience is building a foundation that you can build other things on. And so it's one of the few things in life that if you don't accept the elementary lessons and take that education, you can't build on top of it. And so you'll see things where, you're not going to have enough money to pay your bills for the month, or you don't think that relationship's going to survive. And if you're not careful, that energy, like a big monster, will grow, and you'll be paralyzed and shut down and not be able to do anything because the message was so big and your emotional muscles or resilience was so small that you cave every time. And so then you just repeat the cycle again. And it's sad because too many people, right? I almost said most people, but I'll just say too many people think that the object of life is no resistance. And it's quite the opposite. You want all of those hard times. You want the resistance, or you can't grow. Same thing in business. I don't want restaurants or bars to shut down, but bring it on, because it will force us to grow and become more competent, and we will survive it.
I hear you and I agree, and I think it sounds great, but I'm just putting myself in the position of, even in my own position. I mean, you want to talk about a mess in America. I don't care who you vote for, is our healthcare system. And I mean, my husband and I are coming out of a year-long process of a battle with our insurance company. And there were moments where we had 40, 50, 60 grand that we were responsible for, which for us is a huge amount of money.
Sure.
And the reality of, okay, we're going to have to pay this. There are people who, when you say if you don't know if you can pay your bills this month, that's real. Sure. And people are at the, have the risk of losing their home, not having water or electricity. Yeah. And so I agree with what you're saying about this is an opportunity, or it can be an opportunity. And the repercussions are really real. Sure. If you don't have the resources to sell a bunch of stuff in order to keep your water on or whatever. Yeah. So can you just say more about that?
Yeah. Here's something that a lot of people don't understand. For 98 or 99% of us, that doesn't go away even when you quote unquote do have money. The stakes just change. The game is different. And so whereas you used to worry about, $200 or $300 or $400, maybe that changes and it takes a higher or bigger number to scare you. Liabilities, especially if you're chasing life to the extent that you should, your liabilities never change. There's just zeros or more numbers added to it. I've lived in that place when we were first married, 20 years ago. A couple of bucks was a huge deal, literally down to dollars in order to get something. And most of the time we lived with our refrigerator empty because we were just the kind of people that we weren't going to ask our parents for help. We were living in South Carolina and out there trying to do it our own, and had some setbacks where, Amy was working for $10 an hour and I was coaching kids when I wasn't in school to try to make money. And it's the point is, wherever you are today, how do you allow that hard time, whether you're short $4 or whether you're short $40,000, how do you not cave under that weight and instead use your emotional energy to come up with creative solutions just to stay in the game a little bit longer? Use your insurance situation. That was a big deal. And as you and I talked about it, my encouragement to you was relax, take a deep breath, know that this is going to take some time to work out, and more than likely, most of that money will go away.
But I think there's I mean, even for us, when we were facing that, we had the room to simplify. So even people that have the most money in the world, like, you have space to simplify, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, so we're going to go down to a 1-bedroom apartment, and that's something that we can afford.
Sure.
Or I knew in the back of my mind that I have family that we can reach out to if we have no food or cannot pay our bills.
Sure.
Like, there was always a fallback. And so I was still scared because that number felt big to me. But there are people that I don't know that they have a fallback. They get to a point where there's no more simplifying.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say from our work in the poverty alleviation circles that some people would be surprised, even just when talking with people downtown here who are in transition, which is a way of saying homeless. There are a lot of resources we'll just take in our community for people that would be put in that situation where they would have to go stay in a shelter and get their meals given to them by a volunteer organization. This is, again, something that we have a lot of experience with over the last 10 years, and where we have found there to be a gap and there to be trouble or the need for a lot of attention is you can find food, a roof over your head, and the basic things like gloves, a coat, and all of that stuff. Where we really tend to be hurting in this country is because these programs have been built by government institutions that their form or currency, their form of power or currency is votes. Unintentionally, what has been created is a system that people struggle to get out of, to where when you say yes, I'll take that from you, that almost like a spider's web, you don't get stuck in that web. And there's not good off-ramps, historically speaking, to poverty programs, because those poverty programs are actually businesses that require revenue and grants that need to keep going. Mm-hmm. And so when you here at City Church, which is an inner city non-denominational church that we're a part of, mm-hmm. when we have people that come in that are coming in off the streets, what is confirmed to us through the 10 years of work that we've done is that there tends to be the resources to keep people alive, keep them warm, food in their belly, but the relational skills and the levels of conscientiousness that would allow them to get out of that program and start building a life of their own, which is heavily dependent upon healthy relationships, non-existent. Mm-hmm. And so we call it rescue and relief work, that there tends to be a lot of rescue and relief. And unfortunately, the Christian church, Catholic and Christian church in North America, has become way too oriented around rescue and relief work, when we need to understand that the government does a lot of that, where they provide those resources, and a lot of other nonprofits provide a lot of that. But the next level, which helps a person start to build character traits that would get them and keep them out of poverty, doesn't exist. And emotional resilience would be one of the top things on that list, where we have to help you see how your current situation can serve you if you recognize these things. And so whether it's that, I say that I've always been put in a very unique position, because on one end of my life, I have been fortunate enough to be consulting for and helping millionaires and billionaires. And then on the other end, I am working in a poverty alleviation community. And it always blows my mind to see just how there are so many of the same issues in both camps.
Sure.
And it's because too often we have associated poverty with finances, when finances is a part of poverty, but finances typically are the manifestation of other forms of poverty in a person's life, no matter where they live, no matter how much they have, no matter what they drive. Like, we don't understand that you can be in relational poverty or spiritual poverty or physical poverty. And all of those components are leading to financial poverty. And so we get into these situations where, I'm not downplaying that there are people that, seem to be at the end of their rope, but it just comes down to no different than the way we view real change. You can vote and try to get somebody at the top that you think is a better leader to get change systemically implemented into our community. But at some point in time, we have to understand that the president of this country 30, 40 years from now, or 50 years from now, or 60 years from now, is a child right now being raised in a culture that would be far healthier for the government and for our nation in the long run if we started believing that real change starts on an individual level where we see our neighbor as our responsibility.
This might feel like backtracking a little bit, but
Yeah.
when you speak about emotional resilience, I think where I'm getting caught up is like the situations that would require emotional resilience are, for most people who are still working on that resilience, it's going to put them into a state of fight or flight. And I don't know that you can build emotional resilience if you're in a state of fight or flight. And so how do you trip that? You have to trip that up to not be in a state of fight or flight. Like, I would have never made it through the insurance thing if I couldn't get out of fight or flight and work on that emotional muscle.
Yeah. You're fortunate enough to, and I think one of the things that you've done right, or you and Darren did right, is you're with other people that are a little further ahead and can just say hey, this is something that you'll survive. And so it's an example where the emotional resilience that you built was with relational equity or wealth, where someone could come beside you and say, okay, here's really how this works. And if you just be persistent and you're patient, then you're going to get to a realistic place type of thing. And again, it just reemphasizes one of the reasons why we still struggle so much with poverty in this country, even though we have so much, is because we have chosen to view poverty through the lens of primarily finances. Mm-hmm. When you show me someone that is financially poor, but relationally wealthy, and I'll show you someone that won't be financially poor that long. But it's because we've almost viewed it upside down, that you're financially poor first, when really the way we see it with the capitals that we talk about is you would be spiritually impoverished first, which would bankrupt your relationships, which would take a toll on your physical body, which would then affect your intellect, which would then affect your finances. So we say that in order there is financial, intellectual, physical, relational, and spiritual poverty. And that if you really want to change, you focus on spiritual poverty first. That will affect your relationships. Relationships helps your body and your physical health, and it leads you into opportunities, which increases your intellect and what you see, which will change your finances. And it doesn't take a whole lot to live into that and see that and be like, okay, I don't need a ton of science behind that to see that that's real. Mm-hmm. But as the family started to fall apart and we went through world wars and created, assembly lines and conveyor belts, we've got to understand that as human beings, we're like gardens. And that is, you have to tend to it every day and you have to be really intentional. Nowhere is there a place where a beautiful garden just pops up out of the ground and weeds do not exist, or that the grass or weeds will not overtake what's good. And so from a default standpoint, we almost have behaved over the last 100 years in this country that if you just leave people alone and let them make their own decisions, good things will happen, good things will grow. That's not the case. And so in a lot of situations where we have entire segments of our population or of our community that are overran with weeds, or good things are not growing in their garden, we would do well or be wise to understand that you don't fix a person's finances by immediately running to their finances. Mm-hmm. Now, there is a place for that rescue and relief, which is the idea of running to a group of people just to help them get a little bit of relief.
Mm-hmm.
That needs to exist because, like you said, if I have no food to eat or I'm cold and I have no running water in my home, then it's very hard to do anything.
Sure.
So there is a need for that rescue and relief work.
Mm-hmm.
But in most cities, they have enough. And people don't understand that until you dive into poverty alleviation. There's almost too much in some cases. And so the next step, and there are groups out there like the Chalmers group out of Atlanta that we've worked with. There are entire groups out there that are writing books like When Helping Hurts, which is the Chalmers group, or Toxic Charity. We've got to understand that that's got to be a bigger approach to our overall life. And it's called emotional resilience, like understanding that you can have relational equity, that you are either wealthy intellectually or you are poor intellectually. You're either wealthy physically or you're poor physically. And so there are just a lot of things that, with our country being as young as it is and pioneering consumerism and industry, we've accidentally, it seems as if we've accidentally drifted into thinking that human beings left to themselves grow good things. And it's not the case. Like, family is important. Healthy relationships where people are sacrificing their needs for the sake of the group or the sake of the other person has real effects on the community at large. Mm-hmm. And so we're just now starting to see a lot of this on the back end of it.
So you say that there's an order to these, right? Starting with spiritual.
Yeah.
So if somebody, can you feel or actually be like spiritually wealthy, or no, physically wealthy? What am I saying? Do they have to build on each other? So if somebody is, yes, this is what I'm saying. If somebody is physically struggling, do they need to go back to spiritual, even if, like, where do you begin? That's a good question.
Well, I would view it as a pie versus a ladder.
Okay.
There are definitely qualities that come from stacking, right? That you see that, but I would still tend to view it in a spiral, where it's like a spiral staircase that it still builds and feeds off of each other. But, just because you focus on your physical equity, there are benefits that come from that, to include intellect, but you're going to have to also maintain, like the idea of being humble or content, which I would say is a spiritual practice and growing spiritual equity, so that what is beside the physical capital, which is relational, right? So physical, relational, spiritual, doesn't get compromised. Mm-hmm. And so there's a dynamic where you can be physically strong and be growing physical capital, but if that leads to you becoming self-consumed or proud, that can damage your relationships, that would damage your spirit. Mm-hmm. And so, there are great examples of athletes who focused on a lot of physical capital and intellectual capital to play a game well or to perform at a certain level or have a certain competence. But because they did not work or maintain their relational capital, it ended up compromising them spiritually. And like, let's be really clear about this. Everybody listening to this and everybody that is alive and has ever lived and will ever live are spirits with bodies versus bodies with spirits. Like, you have this eternal energy that outlasts you. Mm-hmm. If you need no other reason to verify that you're a spirit with a body versus a body with a spirit, your life outlasts your breath. And that's just one element of proof or one way of proving that you are a spirit that outlasts your physical qualities. Mm-hmm. And so you see examples in sports where someone invested in their physical capital and their intellectual capital, but their relationships were horrible, which led to the decline of their physical health, which led to the decline of their spiritual health. So their physicality goes strong. It starts hampering their relationships, which we said in a recent episode, just like social isolation has proven to do as much damage to the body from a chemical hormonal standpoint as a pack of cigarettes a day. So when you get out of whack and have all of this capital physically and intellectually, but you don't raise the tide so that your relational capital comes up, your spirit, the essence of who you are, is compromised, and then that sets off a cascade of effects that ends up affecting your physicality and your intellect, which will ruin the very thing you were working on in the first place. The example I would give you is the example of Tiger, right? Tiger comes on the scene years ago, and he's got all of this physical and intellectual capital, and it leads to, because of how much he's focusing on that, it leads to the undermining or the deterioration of his relationships, and that affects him at his core as an eternal spiritual being, and he almost did not get back to that level of physical and intellectual dominance in the game of golf because he was affected to his core, to his spirit, which affected his relationships, which then comes back and affects his physicality and his intellect, which, by the way, ended up affecting his finances.
Sure.
He half of his wealth was given to his former wife. And so when you notice that, I could see, like a light bar where it just goes back and forth, that all of those capitals almost go up one end and it reverberates and it's going to come right back down, type of thing.
Can you say a little bit about since the spiritual capital seems like so foundational, can you say a little bit more about that it's more than just like, well, you need to go to church on Sundays?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it requires, when people ask me about spirituality, the first thing that I say is I'm not an expert, and that I've been hardcore pursuing spirituality since I was 16, right? So 25 years-ish, like hardcore. It starts with a journey to find truth, not find any one person. Most evangelicals or Catholics would say start with the idea of Jesus being the way, the truth, and the life. I don't agree with that. I think it's start with the pursuit of that which adheres to the facts. And my experience tells me that will lead you to this person whose name was Jesus, that, if you believe what the Bible says, came to earth to show people what our original intent looked like, which was preferring other people. And it's through service that we become great, not through greatness or the pursuit of greatness that we become great. And so if someone said to me, I hear you saying that spirituality and spiritual equity or spiritual capital is the foundation to life, and, I want to know how to get there, I would say you need to start pursuing and figuring out that which adheres to the facts. And so you have knowledge, which has a lot to do with truth and facts. And then you have wisdom, which the difference between knowledge and wisdom is the context and the application of truth. And so, one of the things that I've said to my children and to some of the people that I've coached before is it's better to be honest than it is to be right. And that's a true statement about truth that is more oriented around wisdom than it is knowledge. And so I can see something that, let's say that we're working together in an intense environment and I see you make a mistake. Well, if I have a little bit of spiritual capital called wisdom, I realize that now's not the best time to point out that you made that mistake. And when I do that, and instead of saying it in the moment, I wait till the moment is right because I'm wise, which means I know how to apply truth at the right time. I build relational equity with you. And in doing so, that draws other resources to me. And so if you start to get and understand that, you can see why we're dealing with a country that's the quote unquote wealthiest country in the world, but we have extreme amounts of poverty, even amongst the millionaires and billionaires, because somehow we got fooled into thinking that financial resources or money is real wealth.
Right.
That's not real wealth. Emotional resilience. Now, again, let me get real clear about what emotional resilience is. It's learning how to respond to your energy, which that's all you are, is a bundle of energy that you inherited from parents and grandparents and great grandparents and your environment. Learning how to take your energy and the energy that is around you all of the time and respond to it as best as you can in that moment. That's real wealth. Emotional resilience is real wealth. And so the good news is, someone just bought a piece of property from me and they wanted to pay cash, and it was a large sum of money. And they went to their financial broker and had them write a letter for proof of funds, because again, it was amount of money that most people don't have, especially in cash. And their financial broker had to write a letter that basically just said, hey, I've known these people for 20 years and I can tell you they have this much money in the bank, like verifying funds. Like, how great would it be if that was our approach in this country, that the verification of resources had a lot more to do with emotional resilience and relationships and a person's spirituality versus what they have in their bank account.
Right.
And the reason why we're in so much trouble and people are flipping out and separating themselves from others because of an election is because we accidentally got turned upside down and did not know it. A mentor of mine back in South Carolina was a pilot, and he would talk about just, if your instruments weren't right, you could end up flying upside down and not even knowing it. And I still try to figure that out in my head.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah. But that's what's happening.
Yeah. And well, and that's a good intro to my next question of like, how do you do an assessment of, because I think there's a lot of people who are listening who are probably thinking of the person across the street from them who has the other political sign in their yard. Like, oh my goodness, they are so impoverished in this and this and this. How do you do like a really honest assessment of where you're at with these capitals?
Yeah, I think some of the questions that I have to ask myself when it comes to examining or being willing to examine my own poverty is, what makes me happy, right? What steals my peace? What makes a good day good? If my daughter, this is hilarious, which I have another comment about her that she made about you that was hilarious.
I heard it.
Oh, it's so funny. But she said the other day, she said, I hate Mondays.
Oh.
It's like 6 a.m. We're in the kitchen. She's making herself a cup of coffee, which is hilarious.
Sure.
And I go over to her and I'm really like excited and lovey in the morning. And, I'm trying to kiss her and she just looks at me and she goes, I hate Mondays. I said, babe, why? And she goes, well, we're going back to school. I said, no, you've got to learn to love Mondays.
Yes.
We eat Mondays for breakfast around here. Like Monday is the best day of the week. Because if I could, first of all, the difference between Monday and Saturday is a mentality. And you want to talk about emotional resilience, there's one right there. If the word Monday gets you all rattled and upset, or your hope is down, your vibe is down on a Monday versus a Saturday, you're between your ears.
Yeah.
There is no difference apart from letters that, we've identified as Monday versus Saturday. It's what you make it.
Sure.
And if your next opportunity comes with your level of resistance or what you have to, get up for emotionally and develop that emotional resilience, then Monday's the best day of the week. Bring it on. If you're listening, what day do you tend to fear the most? And one way to grow emotional resilience is live into that day and make it your best day of the week. That's how you become stronger. And so getting back to your question, if I had to assess, like, where am I in these 5 categories, financial, intellectual, physical, relational, and spiritual, I would just start to ask myself practical questions. What is it that steals my peace? What is it that gets me excited? What am I looking forward to? The reason why we would ask ourselves what steals my peace or what makes me anxious or what makes me worry, you got to understand that whatever makes you worry is something that you have given power to that you don't have to give power to. You know, the whole government conversation, the reason why whomever is elected, even though it will change and make things different for you, whether it's from a medical standpoint or from a financial standpoint, you've got to understand that the government can't be the problem if you don't make it the solution. Your spouse can't be the problem if you don't make them the solution. Your kids can't be the problem if you don't make them the solution. Your finances can't be the problem if you don't make them the solution. And it's often my attitude or mentality or mindset about finances making me important or making me comfortable that keep me from adding to my finances. Mm-hmm. And so it's when I am the least adulterated, meaning I am as pure and comfortable with myself with nothing added, nothing taken away, to feel good about my life, that positions me and gives me the best chance to acquire equity in all of those capitals: financial, intellectual, physical, relational, and spiritual. Yeah. And so, you know, an aspect of intellectual and spiritual capital is that you have the ability to rightly assess yourself. And so on one end, I am super comfortable and happy with who I am and how I was made, right? Mm-hmm. On the other side of that coin is I know that I'm still learning and my best is yet to come, and I'm not that convinced of myself. I had a situation here recently where I made a tough decision and went in a different direction with an employee who's been a friend of mine and been around a long time. And it was shocking to them and upsetting to them. It was upsetting to me, though it might not feel like it. But at the same time, like when you receive criticism for those things or somebody just doesn't understand where you're coming from, that's okay. Like you can be okay with people criticizing you, because I know that I'm likely to make mistakes and look back on something a month, a year, or a decade later and say, I don't know that I would do that way next time. Mm-hmm. But it's not what makes me. My good decisions are not what makes me. Now, when I understand that makes me more likely to make good decisions because I'm not being manipulated from an outside source. Mm-hmm. But it just comes back to like, you have to be okay and know that your best is good enough today, though your best is not your best today. And so when you can get to a point where you realize what stirs you up and gets you upset, and you can assess why and get into the why, but then you can also work really, really hard at the same time to become the next best version of yourself, you've got that balance going on. Hey, it's nothing from the outside that makes me have peace or feel comfortable with where I'm at today. But I can still work like I've never accomplished anything because I want to be a person of purpose. I want to accomplish things. And when I accomplish those things, it's not going to make me who I am. Mm-hmm.
I think there's a level of grace too that we all could stand to have for ourselves. Like most nights, if I'm not completely depleted, I'll like try and do a little assessment of the day and like let it go.
Sure.
And that's like, I get really excited to start a new day because it's a new opportunity to do it better. But I will go to bed thinking like, okay, this like my physically great day, relationally, this could have gone better or whatever. But like there has to be a time where that's released and not something that I hold on to.
Yeah. I would say I'm in a similar place where there's a lot of energy and motion around me and some of the people and projects that, you know, I'm involved with now. And one of the things that I'm really trying to work on is having a good off ramp at the end of every day to separate what I'm doing from who I am. Mm-hmm. Because it's important to sleep well. It's important to grow and build and have deep relationships.
Sure.
And it just, it spirals. Right? It's difficult for people that are plagued by worry and anxiety to build anything in life.
Right.
Because those things, those new things seem like invitations to worry about more things. But the good news is once you become aware and you're conscientious of something like, building equity in all of the areas of your life, you'll be surprised at how it starts to build on. It's like a snowball. Good things start to build on top of good things.
Yeah. Good.
Emotional resilience, embracing the hardships and the difficulties and the disappointments that come your way, knowing that they can make you stronger and less likely to have to deal with those things in the future.
That's good.
Episode 43.